And in the end, it made you feel that you were in a different reality.
And as Hannibal, now I realize you didn't move a lot.
No, and I didn't blink.
And you didn't blink?
No.
His psychopathic stare made headlines in UK tabloids, while the New York Times dissected Kohberger's self-described feelings of remorselessness as an adolescent. All of that was Kohberger's psychological diagnosis 2 years ago in Wired magazine, an article titled "The Myth of the Psychopathic Personality Refuses to Die. Science wants to solve the problem of evil, but some of the most mainstream concepts are little more than folklore." As I say, 2 years ago, the whole psychopathic narrative has only gotten worse, specifically in terms of this case over time. According to the same article in Wired magazine, Dr. Drew brought on a former FBI agent to discuss Kohberger in the context of the dark triad: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Meanwhile, we saw that same stare that Sir Anthony Hopkins, who played Hannibal Lecter, the same stare he spoke about, we see with Kohberger in court. Deer in the headlights, immobile, but also hypervigilant. I don't see psychopathy, I see anxiety, a lifetime of it, the same brand we saw in Adam Lanza.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
2 years hence, true crime so-called experts are still stuck on the same thing, and yet look how normally it looks here, and here, and even here. According to Wired, the desire for strong language to match heinous acts is only natural. Unfortunately, sadistic bosses, everyday arseholes, and even murderers are still human, shaped by and shaping the world. Do you believe that criminals are shaped by the world? That you may be playing some role in shaping a criminal as well? That society, in a sense, creates criminals, and that criminals are a product, a reflection of our society. In other words, in the same way we may show symptoms of a sickness or a disease, criminals reflect signs or symptoms of sicknesses in society. They are more than simply the sickness itself. They are manifestations of a wider malaise felt by many others. But if that's true, then the solution to crime isn't just catching bad guys, it's identifying the bad stuff in society and sorting it out. But there's also another dimension. Our response to the bad guys, is it helpful? Are we learning anything? Or is it maladaptive? And is all that is happening that we are allowing the perpetuation of what is already there? Condemning people as the subhuman or paradoxically superhuman embodiment of evil isn't based on the characteristics of the individual in front of us, Griffith says, but our response to them. In other words, what we're seeing isn't what we're seeing, it's we're seeing it through our own prisms, our own lenses. And so, such illusory categories make real understanding almost impossible. According to Wired, the perpetrator of the University of Idaho murders should be condemned, but getting inside the mind of a killer is easier said than done. Prediction and prevention, the supposed end goal of criminal profiling, is even harder. And the proliferation of quasi-scientific terms, in other words labels, for jerks, arseholes and even killers, has far-reaching consequences. What this writer is really railing against isn't just the labeling of criminals, but any person we don't like. Effectively, when we label another person, we are essentially not so much dehumanizing them, but dehumanizing ourselves. This only makes matters worse. This only makes society as a whole even less humane and self-aware. And isn't that what we're campaigning for? Isn't that what all of this is about? That in the face of a horrible crime, we want a society that cares more, not one that couldn't care less. Now, before we get to the rest of this analysis, and this will form part of about a 2 or 3 part series, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. Please do show your appreciation. and let's get started.
Let's call it a day.
Come on. I'm the bad guy?
A tale of urban reality.
By some estimates, there are as many as 12 million psychopaths in the United States alone, cold-blooded, remorseless, and strangely charismatic. They commit at least half of all serious and violent crimes. Well, let me ask you a silly question. If there are 12 million psychopaths in the USA and half of all crimes committed are by psychopaths, are there 6 million psychopathic criminals out there? Did you know there were less than 20,000 homicides in America in 2023? So what is going on with all the psychopaths who aren't committing murder? Incidentally, if you think less than 20,000 is a lot, in South Africa there were over 26,000 murders last year, an average of 72 murders a day. That translates to a rate of 42 murders per 100,000 South Africans. In the USA, the murder rate is 6.3, 7 times less. As low as the murder rate is in America, it's still significantly higher than in other developed nations. So, are there just a lot more psychopaths in South Africa than America? Is that how you explain this much higher homicide rate? Or what about poverty, unemployment, and equality? Is that a context that drives criminal behavior? Is the actual real context of a person important? Now think about those basic concepts in terms of Brian Koberger. Poverty. Well, his parents went bankrupt twice. Unemployment. At one point, Brian worked as a security guard. At the time of the murders, he was unable to get a position at the local police station, and he was also about to be fired from his job as a teacher's assistant. What about inequality? Do you think Brian Koberger felt socially equal to just the ordinary other students on campus? If Koberger did somehow get access to the funhouse and he walked through there, do you think he would have felt comfortable? Did he socialize like they did? Did he have girlfriends like Ethan and Jack? Did he have ordinary friends? Quoting from the article, and by some definitions, not only serial killers but also large numbers of corporate executives are considered to be psychopaths. In the popular imagination, they are an inescapable yet fascinating threat in our midst. But is psychopathy a brain disorder as many scientists now claim? Or is it just a reflection of modern society's deepest fears? Much of true crime is about anxiety, how we deal with it. And one thing an anxious person cannot abide is the unknown, is things that they cannot control. And so by calling Koberger a psychopath, he is instantly known and knowable, right? Wrong. It's an admission that we are too cowed, worn out and exhausted to actually make the effort to figure out who these monsters are or how they came to be, which is how and why the next one germinates in the same societal cultural soup and comes into being. And once again, we'll diagnose them as psychopaths too, and so on. According to Wired, quote, Americans understandably want help making sense of the otherwise senseless deaths that populate the front pages of local papers and constitute Netflix's extensive true crime back catalogue. But attempts to characterize evil remain scientifically dubious, and that is something that this channel preoccupies itself with. True crime rocket science. Now think about it, psychopath and evil are actually useless labels. Why are they useless? Because context remains essential, and even a degree of compassion for a fellow human being, even if that fellow human being is a criminal. If the purpose of criminal psychology or an interest in criminal psychology is to pull back the veil on the criminal mind, then terms like psychopath and evil do the opposite. Rather than explain who and what criminals are, they do the opposite. And there is also a built-in deceit that pretends criminals are an entirely different species to the rest of us, forever alien to our more civilized sensibilities, and a bridge too far, thankfully, psychologically speaking. It's a comforting thought, but far from true. In one of the Batman comics, the Joker says, "You are just one bad day from being just like me." Evil doesn't exist neatly in an individual in the way inherently judgmental labels like psychopath might imply. It's not simply that psychopaths aren't born, but made either. It's that if psychopaths exist at all, the same forces that shape them are at work on the rest of us, likely with similar, if more subtle, consequences.
The story of an everyday guy who refused to take it one more day.
So we got a nutcase with a bag full of guns. He's in Hollywood right now, and he's heading west.
I don't know if you've noticed or not, but there's other people waiting to use the phone here.
If you've watched the movie Falling Down starring Michael Douglas, you get a sense that any person pushed too far, pushed too hard, is capable of criminal acts and psychopathy. Now, it's still possible to divest even further from useless labels by focusing on the idiosyncrasies of troubled, or more precisely troubling, individuals, as well as the specific context in which they emerged. Have a look at this comparison of serial killers to the general population, and have a look at some of the types of, you can see the word there, that some of these serial killers suffered from. Look at the one that is 50% psychological. And where do you think that psychological aspect comes from? Very often at school. Despite all of their scholarship, Jalava and Griffith say they don't have a silver bullet for defeating, let alone replacing, the myth of the born criminal. Rather, they advocate for a descriptive rather than the standard normative approach. In other words, describe who someone is and place that person into his or her proper context. None of that is easy, and it often involves private information that families related to these individuals want to keep that way. They want to keep it private. It's also tempting to say that understanding motive after the fact is pointless, like the judge did in the Koberger case, because it can't undo what is already done. But it's not pointless. Understanding our world helps us understand ourselves, and a more self-aware person vitalizes society. A more self-aware society is a more sensitive society, which is, hopefully, a more equal and equitable one too. And this kind of psychological accountability, this cause and effect, understanding it, helps us to understand our impact on our world. And this can perhaps help prevent the bungled and the botched, the losers, the outcasts, from falling through the cracks. Understanding how a certain person arrived at a certain point in time can't undo the hurt they've caused, but it might help them to chart a new path, perhaps even one that deviates from their dark personality. Science wants to solve the problem of evil, but some of the most mainstream concepts, like psychopathy, are little more than folklore, and I am seeing psychopath used constantly in true crime. It's basically folklore that is being peddled in this modern age. When are people going to stop doing it? All it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy. That's how far the world is from where I am. Just one bad day. And where does psychopathy have anything to do with that equation? And by the way, do you believe that that is true? Because if that's true for you, that's true for others. And if that's the case, it behoves us to work together to make this world a kinder place, a kinder world. And a kinder world, I dare say, benefits all. Remember what Plato said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Mark Twain said, kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. In other words, kindness is a universal language. It's the difference between a world supplied with love or driven by hate, and the choice at the end of the day is ours. Many people don't like to believe Koberger could have never become who he became if people were nicer to him. But even if there was a slim chance of that being true, and I believe it's a lot more than that, isn't it worth it? If the alternative is the chance to avoid losing Maddies, Kayleys, Xanas, and the Ethans of the future, if all prevention comes down to is using labels less and be a little kinder, especially to the weirdos, isn't that worthwhile? Hate is easy, love isn't so easy. One is a path of least resistance, one is a path of conscious effort and conscientiousness. One is a road to ruin and mutual destruction, another is a route to meaning and shared harmony. But it is built on a foundation of compassion. And so this is my request for my followers on this channel, and wherever you may dwell online or elsewhere, be a little kinder than you have to. And doesn't that foster a world worth having, a world worth living in, a world worth caring about? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that, but if you guys have found this analysis worthwhile, I'm going to continue this discussion of psychopathy in an episode titled, Are Psychopaths Real? So look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.